So, before we start today, we have to mourn the loss of a beloved character in the wrestling business. Vanguard 1, version 2, he will be missed. He died during a live show last night when he was hit by a baseball bat. And while he was only in the business since 2016, he has made a huge impact, and we will miss you very much. But in all seriousness, last night, man, the Double or Nothing card is really starting to fill out here. It's really starting to come together. We only have one more episode of Dynamite to go, but man, I thought this felt like a go-home show almost. We have Jericho has challenged the Elite to a new match of his devising. We have the women's title match has been set. MJF goes on a preemptive strike, and Brodie Lee draws out the anger of Jon Moxley and is still in the possession of the AEW title. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, to That's Wrestling. We do this show live on YouTube, so if you're listening to this as a podcast, head over to YouTube and like the channel. You can search for it. It's also in the show notes. Be sure to like and subscribe if you are on the YouTube channel. Hit that little bell notification, because as soon as I put up the event, it will let you know exactly what time we are going live, so you can join us. And please head over to iTunes and leave a review. It really helps us out. And also, if you are interested in being a co-host on this show, especially for New Japan, or if you want to be a fill-in or a panelist or something like that, shoot me an email, eric@that'swrestling.com. And that is what my new permanent co-host, Dustin West, has done, and he is joining us today. How's it going, Dustin?
It is going great, man. What a week it's been, and what a show it was last night. I could go on forever about myself and this, that, and the third, but I'm ready to go, man. I'm very excited to talk about last night's episode of Dynamite.
All right, so we'll get your plugs in at the end here, and let's just get to it. This week, we actually had full pyro and theme song opening. They are at Daly's Place once again down in Tampa, Florida. And all the usual suspects were at ringside. We had Billy Gunn, Austin Gunn. We also had Sean Spears, who had a whiteboard, though he didn't use it as much as I thought he was going to when I first saw it. But he was standing next to Nyla Rose, and on the whiteboard it said, Nyla dropped a bomb. We have Excalibur, Tony Schiavone, and JR on commentary once again. And the show, I think this is like one of the few times that the show has actually started with a promo segment here. We have Lance Archer's music playing, and he comes out and he's already beating up a guy. He's throwing him out of the tunnel and throws him into the ring. He's just beating him up, and he throws him out of the ring. Jake Roberts makes his way out as well, and Jake Roberts has some words. He says, I've been asked to make an apology for last week's antics. As soon as she kisses my ass, I'll give her an apology. And anytime you come inside this area, he's referring to the ring, this is no man's land for any of you jerks. This is our area, our playhouse, our book, and we are the authors of the book, and we are writing every friggin' chapter, whether you like it or not. As far as I'm concerned, a woman is great at home, cooking, wiping babies' butts, diapering them, and occasionally, when it's cold outside, she can keep me warm. And I have a woman who comes and sees me, but she makes sure that I've been watching Lance's work, because it makes me very excited. Now, Cody Rhodes, the time is about up. No longer can you hide behind your brother or any obstacle you can find. No more excuses. It's time to pay the piper. And then we hear an engine roaring, and Jake Roberts tries to continue on. He's like, what the hell is that noise? And then at this point, we are shown Cody. He's in his Ford, what is it, a blackout F-150?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
He's revving his engine. He then rams a barricade and has a cart of crap on it that, just falls and makes a bunch of noise. He brawls with Lance Archer. They make their way into the ring. Jake is given little commentary throughout on the mic, which is pretty funny. Cody chokes Archer with his own hair, and then Archer goes for a blackout. Cody escapes. Cody goes for the Cody cutter, but that is blocked, and Archer then looks a bit perplexed, a little scared maybe, and he ducks out. Jake basically is saying, okay, this can wait, and that was the opening of this show.
Yeah, and what an opener it was, man. I'm gonna go on like a little thing real quick. One of the things that I love the most about this segment, Jake Roberts. Now, when I first started cutting promos for PWA, one of the things I'd like to do was, of course, go back and try to find other really good promos. And one of the things Jake Roberts does so well, and not a whole lot of people really come to mind that I could compare it to, is Jake Roberts just speaks so soft and so low, and he's got that raspy voice. So anytime he talks on the microphone, he pulls you in with his words, and he makes you pay attention. And Jake Roberts just commandeered that entire segment. It was the background of him giving his commentary on telling Lance Archer what to do, kind of like a ring general. But this whole segment was designed for one thing and one thing only, and that was to get you excited for Double or Nothing. This whole thing, by the way, started what was that match with Lance Archer with Dustin Rhodes? It was 2 weeks ago. And
yeah,
it feels a lot longer because last week or 2 weeks ago, it was Lance Archer versus Dustin Rhodes, where Dustin Rhodes got just destroyed. Last week, it was Brandi Rhodes who fell in the sights between Lance Archer after Britt Baker threw her in, and Jake Roberts threw a python or a boa constrictor on her. So here we are 2 weeks after the Dustin Rhodes-Lance Archer match, and it feels so much personal than you'd think. You'd have thought they've been building for this match for a while now.
Well, they really have, because as soon as Jake came in, I mean, we're talking over 2 months ago, before COVID even happened, he has been calling out Cody the whole time.
Yeah, and it's been so great. So you get to see this culmination from when you talk about Jake Roberts pushing towards Cody, firing back at Cody, and then within the last 2 weeks, it's just taken off. And the segment was designed to give you a taste and leave you wanting more, and it did exactly that. And I am very excited for the Double or Nothing or the TNT Championship match.
Yeah, and I just loved Jake here, just being so slimy, being misogynistic about the whole thing. It is great. But okay, so here is one of my gripes about the segment, and it comes down to more production than anything else.
Okay.
Why was there a camera in Cody's truck? Because if this is supposedly happening spontaneously, they would not have access to his truck ahead of time. Why was the cameraman standing in front of Cody's truck to begin with? And it was so stupid that Cody was just like 20 feet from where he ended up stopping the truck. He's sitting there in the truck and he's just revving the engine, and he's like 20 feet from where he ends up stopping. So it would have been so much better if he just came like flying around the corner or something and then came in, not like this, interrupting with revving the engine, because it made no sense. It takes all the realism out of it.
Yeah, the top speed of 15 miles an hour just to come to a stop really didn't give me the general intentions. But
right.
Yeah, I see exactly what you mean.
Just to hit a little barricade with a tiny little push cart with some pipes and stuff on it, so it made some racket when it fell over. It's like,
yeah, like a piece of plywood hit the ground.
Yeah, it wasn't so that was one thing that really bugged me. And the second was, at the end of that exchange, why did Cody disengage when he had the upper hand? And Lance Archer was still in the ring, even though, Jake the Snake had his hand on his arm, but Cody had the upper hand at this point, and Archer was still in the ring. I mean, so these guys have been harassing your wife now at this point for what they did last week. So why is he not like just attacking still? And he need to be the one to be pulled off, and not Lance Archer. I think that was a slight misstep right there.
Yeah, I think it was just a miscommunication probably on those parts.
Yeah. So next up, as always, they introduce the card. So for the rest of the evening, we have Brodie Lee versus Christopher Daniels, Pineapple Pete versus Chris Jericho, MJF is in action. We have the 4-way with Hikaru, Shida, Penelope Ford, Britt Baker, Kris Statlander, basically a number one contenders match. Then we have Santana and Ortiz versus Kenny Omega and Matt Hardy, and then Best Friends versus Jurassic Express. So this is actually usually we have 5 matches on the show. This week we actually have 6. And we'll talk about that a little at the end of the show. Next up, we have a video package basically just covering the tag team division. Talks about how Best Friends have been moving their way up the ranks this year. Dark Order has been growing, and that Jurassic Express is actually undefeated in 2020. They also in it use the name Proud and Powerful, even though they have not even been announced as Proud and Powerful since like December, because I think the name is kind of stupid.
Yeah.
But they haven't been announced as that. They weren't announced as that tonight. So it's like they dropped the name for 5 months now, and they just kind of used it in this video, even though they didn't use it later in the night. So that was kind of weird. So we start off the night with Jurassic Express with Marco Stunt at ringside versus Best Friends with Orange Cassidy. So it's a babyface versus babyface team. And Jungle Boy and Chucky T started out with some chain wrestling to a draw, and Jungle Boy offers a handshake. Chucky T accepts, and they both tag out. Then Luchasaurus takes control of Trent for a while. In the background, this was hilarious. I don't know if anybody saw this, but Marco Stunt went over to hang out with Orange Cassidy on the ramp, and he got shooed away by Chucky T later. It was pretty funny. Jungle Boy gets tagged in. Trent ends up hitting a Saito suplex to take control at this point. Jungle Boy gets set up on the top rope. Best Friends try to do a double team suplex off the top, but Jungle Boy ends up fighting out of it and drop kicks Trent off of Chucky T's shoulders. We have a breakdown at this point where all 4 men are going at it. Luchasaurus comes in, hits a bunch of kicks. Him and Trent fight to the outside. Chucky T and Trent give Luchasaurus a suplex on the floor, and they go for their hug. Jungle Boy then hits a dive on both of them while they are doing so. Then Orange Cassidy comes over to check on Trent, and he pets his beard gently. We go to commercial break at that point, and then after the commercial, we have Jungle Boy and Chucky T are still both in, and they both get tagged in right after this. Luchasaurus and Trent tag out, and they have a really great striking exchange. Jungle Boy really laid these forearms in. Chucky T did it as well. It looked really, really good. And Jungle Boy was really aggressive here. Trent gets in there and gives Jungle Boy this massive flying knee. It's basically a shining wizard, but standing. And Luchasaurus hits this question mark kick on Trent. Trent ends up hitting a swinging DDT, and everyone is down at this point. So then Orange Cassidy, he stands up. He gets up onto the stage. It looks like he's going to do something, join the fight in some way. Out of nowhere comes a flying Rey Fenix with this insane kick that basically was going to send his head into the 10th row if it wasn't already attached to his body. And behind the ref's back, while all this commotion is going on, we have Orange Cassidy down and the Best Friends looking on him. Aubrey Edwards is also checking on everybody behind her back. MJF jumps the railing, runs Jungle Boy into the ring post. Nobody saw it on either team or the ref. Jungle Boy gets rolled in to the ring. Chucky T hits the awful waffle on Jungle Boy and picks up the win. And then after the match, Wardlow picks up Marco and just flings him into the barricade like he was a 10-pound sack of potatoes. And so we have a bit of a preemptive strike here by MJF heading into their match at Double or Nothing. I thought this was a very solid match. Really good work, especially really good work out of Jungle Boy. Everybody hit their spots, but man, that flying kick from Rey Fenix was insane.
We talked about that before this show. I must have rewound that kick 6 times, and each time I rewound it, because remember the first one, I'm like, oh, that was good production, good camera work. Oh shit, he really connected. And then the second one looked bad, and the third one looked bad. I'm just like, oh my god, like Ray Phoenix leaped with the intent to kill, and he got every bit of that drop kick. That's what I took away from that match. I wanted to acknowledge this. Last week, because we figured out how Brodie Lee is challenging Jon Moxley for the AEW Championship, and we went through the rankings for that. So what I really liked about this match, and they also did it with the women's match, which we'll talk about later, was I really liked how they mentioned the rankings in this, how it was two faces, why they're fighting. So when you put two faces together, you think, oh, normally it's face and heel. I liked that they put two faces together. They explained, oh, well, this is to determine this match for Double or Nothing. Very good match. It also set up something that I think we also spoke on last week, and that was pretty obvious after this, pretty much almost confirmed, which would be Luchasaurus versus Wardlow.
Yes. Well, I don't think this was specifically for Double or Nothing, because that wasn't going to work out, because Omega is part of the Elite. I believe it is for the number one contendership, but I don't think it was specifically for a shot at Double or Nothing.
Right. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. It was just to figure out the number one contendership.
Yep. But yeah, Wardlow and Luchasaurus, that has been teased and building for a couple months now, basically ever since Wardlow first started wrestling and when he actually came in. So yeah, I'm sure they're going to go somewhere with that at some point. I doubt it's going to be at Double or Nothing, given how big the card already is. But that's probably going to be a big TV match sometime this summer.
I agree.
Next up, we have a very perplexing segment that we will talk about at the end of the show, but Jon Moxley arrives and Alex Marvez tries to get in a word. Moxley just slaps the camera, keeps going. Alex is a horrible actor. He's like, oh, wow, I've never seen him like this before. We're going to need some security. It's like, oh, man. I mean, God bless Alex, but I just can't take him seriously, and nothing ever turns out good when he's on the TV. I don't know if it's just me, but
he tried so hard to make sure he didn't mess up those lines there.
Right.
Man. You gotta give him some credit on that.
I think what they should have done is told them, don't say anything, because it would have worked out so much better. Because I think even if it was a good interviewer, that those words were just not going to work.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll talk about that segment at the end of the show, because I have a gripe about this happening. Penelope Ford, Hikaru Shida, Kris Statlander, and Britt Baker. So this is essentially a number one contenders match. They didn't specifically say so, but of course we have Britt Baker, Kris Statlander, and Hikaru Shida, which are all 1, 2, and 3, I believe. And Penelope Ford, who isn't ranked, and I like that they did mention that she was not ranked, so this could be big for her to skyrocket up the rankings if she pulls out a win here. We have Britt and Shida going after each other at the beginning, of course. That was the match where Britt Baker deviated her septum, so it wasn't a complete broken nose, so she's all right. So they're going after each other. Statlander and Shida have a little bit of alliance early on. They hit this wicked double backbreaker onto Britt. Statlander takes a crazy DDT from Britt at one point. Shida ends up putting Britt up under the top turnbuckle. Looks like she's going to go for a superplex, but Statlander comes in and turns it into like the powerbomb suplex kind of tower spot. Shida landed crazy high up on her neck and head, and she immediately started selling it so quick I thought she was legitimately hurt, because it looked pretty bad. I hope she's actually okay. I haven't heard that otherwise from the sheets. So she seemed okay in the rest of the match. Statlander grabs Ford, and she almost lost her actually, but Kris Statlander is super strong, and she made it work. She ended up slamming Ford onto a downed Britt Baker. We hit a commercial here, and when we come back, Statlander goes for a big bang on Hikaru Shida, but Britt Baker breaks that up, hits the double knees on Shida for a 2 count. Baker hits a destroyer on Statlander, which looked awesome. Penelope Ford hits a handspring cutter. It was a lethal injection. I think Britt was mostly out of position for this one. She was too far back because Penelope Ford's a bit short, so I think Britt needed to be a little bit more forward than when she was, because it looked a little bit too orchestrated there. But it was all right. Ford actually hits a stunner on Hikaru Shida. Britt hits a neck breaker on Ford. Statlander hits a Falcon Arrow on Baker for a 2 count. And then a hilarious ad for the Double or Nothing I Watched at Home t-shirt, which I thought was pretty funny. Shida ends up suplexing Ford into Statlander, who's sitting in the corner. Britt and Statlander are sent to the outside. Chris Sabian gets involved for a second by holding Shida, but Shida moves out of the way as Ford is charging, and instead of the normal spot where Ford would knock the person off the ring, they actually start making out. And then Shida ends up giving Sabian a kick for his troubles, and he's sent to the floor. Shida hits a Falcon Arrow on Ford for 2. Statlander lifts Ford up onto her shoulders. It looks like I don't know why she did this, because I don't know what she would do after this, because she had her in the electric chair position. It's like, okay, if you're going to do something by yourself, that's a weird position to get somebody into, except for the One-Winged Angel, and she wasn't going to be doing that. Ford gives Statlander a Poison Rana, and oh my god, I thought Statlander had killed herself because she didn't manage to keep her arms clasped around Ford's shins, so she let go a little too early, so she landed straight on her head, basically on Ford's back. So it looked like both of them could have been hurt on that one. Looks like they were both okay. Baker has Statlander in the lockjaw on the outside on the floor. Shida hits a massive backbreaker on Ford, hits a running knee, and picks up the win. I thought this was one of the better women's matches in AEW. There's a couple spots that were a little scary. But for the most part, it looked like everybody had something to do. No one was waiting around for a spot to happen. And I think it flowed pretty well, and the right person came out with the victory.
Yeah, the match was really great. I really enjoyed. They had a lot of fast-paced, like 2 count transitions, a lot of kickouts. I remember watching that Poison Rana, and yeah, it looked like she let go a little early, but it looked like Kris Statlander just kind of jumped up, did a backflip, and landed on the back of her neck on Penelope Ford's spine.
Yeah, it looked to me that it was her forehead, so she was at least past the 180 mark. It looked like her forehead kind of smashed her. It was weird.
It was one of the same things with that Rey Fenix dropkick. A couple rewinds. I really also, one of the things that I really did like about this match was Britt Baker, and I really like what she's doing with the heel character. The fact that she has an opportunity to really win a fatal 4-way, but instead she chose to attack and just stay on that lockjaw on Statlander on the outside of the ring.
Yeah, and just completely ignore what was going on in the ring.
Yeah, it's a fatal 4-way match. Winner obviously gets a huge championship opportunity, and for whatever reason, whatever motivation, she chose to keep that lockjaw locked in tight on the outside of the ring. So I really enjoyed Britt Baker in this match. They all did really well. Like you said, each person had a spot to shine. Nothing really felt like they were waiting. They were really pushing forward to make sure everyone had a spot. It flowed smooth. It had good pacing, good turnout. Shida, of course, won. So I mean, the match was, and like you said, it was certainly one of the better AEW women's matches they've had, and it was a good match, good solid match.
Yeah, I like all four of these women. I really like Statlander and Hikaru Shida's in-ring work. Statlander can be a little. I think she goes for it a little bit more than she needs to at times. And but other than that, I love Statlander and I love Hikaru Shida. And Ford is doing really well. She's obviously really athletic. I'm sure her time will come for her to shine, but she is really short, so I think people need to just kind of work that in. Like I said, that cutter spot, Britt Baker was standing way too far back for how much distance she would actually travel, considering that she's a lot shorter than Britt is.
Right.
There was one little cringy thing that JR said at the end of this. He said, all women generally hate each other, and it's clear Britt Baker likes no one. I'm like, JR, I'm not sure if you can actually say that. So that's one thing that slipped by, and this was a taped show, so they could have taken that line out. So that might have been a little iffy in this time. Luckily, neither Tony nor Excalibur gave any type of response to that one, so I think they could have deleted it without much issue, but he did say it.
It was. I caught that too. They didn't want anything of it. They just didn't touch it. But this women's match showcased 4 of the top female competitors that AEW has to offer, which pretty much told us that the AEW women's division has some really good depth. So I'm also really excited to see what they continue to do with that division.
Yeah. Next up, we have a short Pineapple Pete video package. He's pretty much leaning into the name that Jericho is given, says he's been called Suge D. He's been in the business for 16 years, and ever since Jericho started calling him Pineapple Pete, life has been sweet. And then he pulls up into frame. He's drinking a drink out of a pineapple. He says, but he doesn't throw insults, he throws hands. And that was basically the end of the promo. So Pineapple Pete, aka Suge D, is really leaning into this name, and I think that's probably a smart decision on his part, because if everything starts to open back up and he doesn't stay with AEW, his stock has suddenly risen quite a lot.
Yes.
Next up, quickly, it was confirmed that Nyla Rose versus Hikaru Shida will be the women's title match at Double or Nothing. And then we do have something added to that later on in the evening. We will get to that. Next up, we have Santana and Ortiz, and as mentioned, that's how they were announced, not as proud and powerful, versus Kenny Omega and Matt Hardy. Santana and Ortiz attack Omega while he's making his entrance, doesn't even get to the ring. Damascus comes out, aka Matt Hardy, and he starts biting Santana, and he's got like blood in his mouth. I'm assuming it was a capsule, because that would be a really weird thing to happen. Commentary says what we were actually talking about yesterday. It seems like they might be grounding the character, because JR said, I don't think Matt Hardy knows who he is. Tony says, it's obvious he has many personalities, fractured, if you will. And then JR fires back with, thanks a lot, Dr. Phil. And then they all have a great laugh. I thought commentary on this show, they just let loose. They all seemed like they were having a ton of fun. And that just made me have more fun watching the show, when everybody who's doing commentary, it loves what they're doing. And I listened to the AEW, was it? I don't remember. I think it was Talking to Jericho with JR, and JR was talking about he's only had Tony Khan in his ear like 4 or 5 times since they started, just to remind him of something, and that was about it. So these guys are allowed to pretty much go on whatever they need to, and they don't have somebody yakking in their ear the entire time, which is great to hear. So that's probably why he's having so much more fun. The bell finally rings once Matt Hardy makes his way into the ring. Ortiz and Omega fight in the ring for a while. Santana and Hardy fight on the outside for a second, and then Ortiz rakes the back of Omega, and he does his little cat claw pose that he likes to do. Omega hits a Kotaro Crusher Bulldog combo on both Santana and Ortiz. That was a pretty cool move. Omega and Hardy hit a modified poetry in motion, I guess. Omega does the hip attack into the corner move that he does. So he did like the hip attack jumping off of Hardy's back. Santana and Omega do some brawling. Omega is sent to the outside. Omega and Ortiz fight on the outside behind the ref's back a little bit. And then we go to commercial. All of the commercials this week, none of them were picture-in-picture, I believe, because I was watching the fight feed and none of them had action through the commercial, which was kind of rare. So it looks like they did some editing just to fit the show in there and not have added match length that wasn't going to be seen anyway. So I guess that works out. When they come back, Santana is in control of Omega. Santana and Ortiz put on the double team Boston Crab and Camel Clutch combo that they like to do. They continue to work over Omega for a little bit. After a striking exchange, Omega hits a Snapdragon when Ortiz is playing to the camera. Both guys tag out. Hardy and Santana are the legal men at this point. Hardy fights off a double team attempt from Ortiz getting involved. It's a side effect, which they actually did call as a side effect this week. So that's something last week I noticed they were straying. They did not call the moves by their names because they probably weren't sure if they could or not. Hardy goes for a twist of fate, which again, that they actually used the name of. So it looks like they're in the clear for using those particular names. They're not trademarked by WWE or something like that. We end up having a breakdown where all four men are fighting. Hardy hits a great twist of fate. And then Ortiz ends up breaking up the pin. Omega and Santana fight in the ring. Santana hits a cutter and then a cannonball off of Ortiz's back. Kind of launched himself off of his back. Ortiz then gets tagged in here. They try to give Omega a street sweeper. Omega turns it into a poison Rana and gets a tag to Hardy. Hardy actually puts on a butterfly lock on Ortiz. Man, I haven't seen that for a while. I don't know if that's something that Hardy's used in the past. Have you ever seen him use that?
I haven't, but I guess maybe that's in the normal moveset of Damascus now.
I guess, yeah. I've seen the somebody in the G1 used the butterfly lock quite a lot last year, but Sammy Guevara actually starts waddling out. He has a neck brace on. He has a chair, but it's a padded chair. So I don't know what he was thinking. Anyways, he comes out with a padded chair. Hardy gives him the best twist of fate I have ever seen. Sammy just flipped over completely on his head. It was like the greatest sell of a twist of fate I have ever seen. Ortiz is set up on the top turnbuckle. Omega hits a flying V trigger to him. Hardy pulls him off is basically a cutter off the top rope. They called it a twist of fate, but there wasn't much of a twist in there. And Matt Hardy gets the pin. I thought this was a very fun match. Sammy coming out with a neck brace and a padded chair really got me. And that twist of fate that he took was awesome.
This match was a lot of fun. I think I had to pause the Sammy Guevara coming out. Because I was laughing too hard. He has this neck brace on. He's using the padded chair almost like a crutch. He's walking stiff. The match was really great. Where it was on the card, I also thought was perfect. It followed the women very well, and then it led up to the next match we'll talk about. But where it was in the card, the turnout, and also I wanted to point out that Matt Hardy and Omega, this was their first official tag team match because last week's was a street fight, and they had really, really great chemistry. Yeah,
and I liked how they worked into some of their signature spots, but kind of made them into some sort of a double team move. Like I said, instead of the poetry in motion, Matt still went down to use as a launching pad, but Omega did his hip attack that he usually uses by crushing somebody in the corner. So that's something nice to see. And then that flying V trigger, he got so much height. I can't believe he actually got that high. And then pulling him off into kind of the cutter off the top rope.
Yeah, he pulled it. He did get a lot of air on that too. Now that I think about it, the match was great. The Damascus biting, I like how that started as kind of the match in a way. Hardy also threw one hell of a clothesline in that match.
Yes, yeah, I forgot. Yeah, that was during one of the striking exchanges.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was versus Santana or Ortiz, but man, he threw a clothesline, which I haven't seen Matt Hardy throw a clothesline in if ever.
Yeah, I think he crushed Santana with that one.
Yeah, and also same thing in my notes too. The commentary in this just felt just so pure, and the guys ringside were very interested in the match. They were having a good time, and it was just once you hear people do what they're good at and be able to do it with the leashes off, it really let them go for it, and it really did make the match and the rest of the evening really enjoyable. I mean, everything about this match was a lot of fun.
Yeah, now that you bring that up, I might as well talk about it now. The crowd, I thought, what this week was even better than they have been. They actually started some chants. They had they had like a Cody chant going at the beginning of the show. They had a "This is awesome" chant after Jungle Boy did his dive to the outside, it was funny. I was listening to, I don't know who I was listening to, but they said that, they were watching the show. They almost forgot there wasn't a crowd there because of the chants. They're like, oh, this feels like they didn't even realize it. And then they realized, oh, wait a minute, that's all the wrestlers doing these chants and stuff. So there was a lot more kind of, collaborative or coordinated chants and whatnot. They also had, it looked like they're probably friends and family of production and wrestlers and whatnot. They had them spread out deeper into the seats. So even that noise, I think, even adds even more depth because they're farther away. So you kind of have different levels of loudness, and you have some delay or echo from everybody who's farther away from the ring. And I thought it just added a really great vibe. Just like last week, they had the extra people kind of up in the regular seats to add a little bit more ambiance. And I thought that worked out really well.
It was a nice touch. I like the heels were booing the faces were booing the heels. They were going back and forth. It was a lot of fun.
All right, so next up we have Taz with Darby Allin, and before this, he says that Darby Allin is announced for the casino ladder matches. He ends up using the WWE speak, which kind of bummed me out a little bit, calling it a opportunity for the AEW championship. So that kind of bummed me out a little bit. Anyways, he says that he owes Darby Allin an apology, but in actuality, he ends up just making it worse. He says, last week I kept bringing up that you lost to Cody for the TNT title tournament. And the way it happened is you hit this coffin drop and all your body weight hit Cody's chest, but you slid off of him, and you got on your back, and then Cody used a basic amateur wrestling move, a tilt, and Taz says, "You don't get it, I can help." It's like, oh, Taz, you just made it even worse. And then Darby stands up and says, "No, Taz, you don't get it. I know what a tilt is. Back in the day, I placed third in the state of Ohio in amateur wrestling." Taz says, "Well, I didn't know that." And then Darby just walks off. So Taz is digging a hole here with Darby Allin a little bit. I'm not sure where this is going between the two of them, if anywhere. And this is just, maybe it's just prodding Allin a little bit more than anything.
Yeah, Taz is right now 0-2 with Darby Allin. Darby Allin, again, keeps it short, walks off. I'm curious to see if this goes anywhere. I'm not sure if it's filler or if they have an intention to maybe go with it down the line. But whatever it was they were really trying to do, I can't really give any feedback on it because I don't know what purpose it serves. But Taz is... when he started talking about the tilt and stuff, it was like listening to Chris Collinsworth call an NFL commentary game. It's just very obvious and just kind of painful to watch. But I mean, for what it was, I mean, it filled in about a minute worth of airtime. So I mean, I'll take Darby Allin any way I can.
Yeah, Taz keeps kind of putting his foot in his mouth a little bit. Obviously completely intentioned, because Taz is extremely smart, and this is completely on purpose, but he's not accidentally doing this. Next up, they talk about how the casino ladder match is going to work. It's actually going to be 9 people all entering at a time interval. And there will be a chip above the ring, kind of a casino chip. I'm guessing they're going to have a big oversized casino chip or something like that. But the chip can be grabbed at any time, so it could actually end before the 9th person I don't see that actually happening. But a very interesting concept for the casino ladder match is that they're going to be coming in at a time interval. I believe they said 90 seconds. So it's kind of like the Royal Rumble of ladder matches.
Yeah, it's the Royal Rumble Money in the Bank match.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty cool concept. We'll see how it goes. I'm assuming all 9 are going to make it to the ring before the match actually ends. But we will see how that goes at Double or Nothing. But I'm looking forward to that. It's a new twist on a ladder match, and I'm kind of excited for that.
Yeah, it's a nice breath of fresh air in terms of ladder matches. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Next up, we have Lexi backstage. She's with Hikaru Shida. She asks what her intention or what her expectations are going into the title match with Nyla. Hikaru Shida says that she's happy she can challenge for the women's title at this time, and the best thing she can do is win the title. She says, I will beat Nyla. Nyla comes in and butts in and says that you had a really hard match tonight, and I just want to offer my congratulations. I know you've been looking for something. You've been missing something, so I got you a present. And then she whacks Hikaru Shida over the head with a kendo stick and says, I found your kendo stick, bitch, and then walks off. I thought this was okay. I thought Hikaru Shida's English isn't horrible. I've seen her on Twitter and all that stuff. She has a decent grasp, but I think they probably could have done a retake on this. Some of her sentence structure was a little off. So what I said here, I just cleaned up what she actually said. Right. And I think they could have just done a retake on that and had her clean it up a little bit, because she can speak English pretty well. Thought it was a little bit strange of how it seemed a little over the top with Nyla Rose. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean that's probably a good way to put it, because when Nyla Rose is a monster, you could put her in there and she doesn't even have to say anything. She can just stare at her and like really intimidate her. She's not Nyla Rose isn't bad on the mic, but when she just like hits her with a kendo stick, and calls her a bitch, it felt kind of thrown together. It did feel unnecessary, but I guess that's. Maybe they did do a couple takes and that was the one they chose to go with. You know,
right.
It felt. I don't know how to describe it. It just was. It was there.
Yeah. I think it might have been a little more effective. She could have kept the line at the end, but maybe she didn't. Maybe if she just hit her out of nowhere instead of coming in and talking first, that might have been a little less is more type of deal, something like that. Or if they went the route where Nyla Rose did give Shayna and the ref a power slam through a table, that might have been a little more effective. It's a little bit of a callback to what she's done in the past to try to hurt opponents. But obviously this was for a reason why she hit her with the kendo stick, but I think they could have gone a slightly different route. Anyways, the match is later announced, I might as well throw it in here, that it's actually going to be a no DQ match, no countout match for the women's title. So this is interesting with the women getting a no DQ match. I'm curious how this is going to go.
I'm excited to see it.
Next up, we have MJF making his return to the ring after his life-threatening hangnail injury. This is MJF versus Lee Johnson. We saw Lee Johnson quite a lot during the Atlanta taping shows, so pretty much before last week, the 4 weeks prior, both on Dynamite and Dark. He is 0-5. MJF, he just trucks this guy with the elbow right off the bat. Like, he just leveled him. He hits a belly-to-belly overhead throw. MJF does the Ric Flair strut. Continues just beating on Johnson. Eventually hits a massive shoulder breaker, locks on the Salt of the Earth armbar, and gets the submission. So, short and sweet, to the point, completely destroys Lee Johnson. The biggest thing, though, is he grabs the mic afterwards, says that he's sorry that his peers don't know how to react to a professional wrestler, says that he's excited to face Jungle Boy at Double or Nothing, but he's got to be honest, he's got a little bit of ring rust. He's feeling a little stiff. I bet Lee Johnson can attest to that. So I'm guessing that's a little bit of an inside reference to he worked a little bit stiff against Johnson. Says that he could use a tune-up match, and he says that he saw backstage that Marco Stunt had an open contract for next week, so he put his name on the dotted line to face Marco Stunt next week.
Whew. Well, again, I will take MJF any way I can. Best heel in the business. The guy, even without a crowd, is still making faces, still taunting. He's taunting a crowd that doesn't exist. He's talking to the camera. He's talking to everybody at home. Also, real quick, again, the Shawn Spears ringside talking about like his best friend MJF is absolutely great. I want to see these two together for as long as I possibly can.
Right? I didn't see any of the other things he put on his signs. I don't know if you caught anything else.
Oh, it was just I forgot exactly what it was. Something along the lines that MJF is like his best friend or something like that. It's just seeing that bromance that seemed to blossom within the past couple weeks. I love it. I really, I know it's stupid and it's corny, but I really like it. But MJF challenging Marco Stunt next week. So of course, Marco Stunt earlier was thrown around like a rag doll by Wardlow. MJF, of course, gets to capitalize on that next week. So we will again get to see the stepping stones of which could eventually be Wardlow versus Luchasaurus, not at Double or Nothing, but like I said in the beginning of the show, they are setting up something for beyond Double or Nothing. And I think this might be one of the showcase rivalries they may choose to go with.
Yeah, I wouldn't even be surprised if they pushed Wardlow Luchasaurus to All Out.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so next up we have Suge D, aka Pineapple Pete, which is how he was announced. Suge D, aka Pineapple Pete, versus Chris Jericho. What'd you do?
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Jericho comes out with all of the Inner Circle. Santana or Ortiz are a little stiff and beaten up. They're kind of like holding their necks, and of course Sammy Guevara has the neck brace on, which is hilarious still. Jericho slaps Pete, and then Pete hits Jericho with a ton of shots. He just lays in strike after strike after strike, throws him into the turnbuckle across the way. Throws some more strikes. He then runs out of the corner to kind of do a splash onto Jericho. Jericho hits him with the Judas effect right away and picks up the win. So very quick squash of Pineapple Pete here, even though he got all the offense in except for the final one that mattered.
Yeah, it was quick squash. Jericho, of course, got the win. I guess I can't really be too surprised that it was a squash match, but what this really set up wasn't even the match at all, which I know we're about to get into. But my only note for this match, it was a squash, but Chris Jericho coming out with a bat, looking all tough, untouched, fresh as a daisy, and then you get everyone else in the Inner Circle behind him just look like they got in a car accident. I don't know why that made me laugh so much. It's just Jericho's so full of himself and the Inner Circle being the top of the world, and he's ready to go with his bat, and everyone else just looks just exhausted, like they've just been through hell, and it made me laugh, so it gets a thumbs up on my end.
Yeah, so one of the reasons they managed to fit 6 matches into this episode is obviously MJF was a quick one, and he was going to cut a promo afterwards. And here, this was a nice quick squash, and Jericho actually has a extended promo at this point. Jericho grabs the mic and says, "Now that the threat of Pineapple Pete has been vanquished, let's move to the matter at hand, the Inner Circle versus the Elite." Is the Elite even a thing anymore? We haven't seen.
No idea.
No, that's what Jericho said. He says, "Is the Elite even a thing anymore? We haven't seen half their guys for like a month. I heard Hangman Page quit the business and is bushwhacking around the forests of North Carolina, picking berries. Meanwhile, Nick and Matt Jackson are sitting at home, pouting over how good the Inner Circle is. Says that they're fair and honorable gentlemen, aren't we, Sammy? Sammy says, we're super honorable. Jericho says, say it in Spanish. And Sammy says, honorable, something like that. Anyways, the word for honorable in Spanish is honorable anyways. Jericho says, damn right. And then says that we're going to give the Elite a chance to get their shit together, and here's why. While the world is reacting to coronavirus, the Inner Circle acts. While history stands still worldwide, the Inner Circle is writing history, and that's why we've created the Stadium Stampede match. And what is the Stadium Stampede match, you say? If you thought the street fight last week was a wild wait until you see what dastardly deeds the Inner Circle can commit on the Elite in a football stadium 80,000 seats large. So lick your wounds, massage your egos, because the Inner Circle is challenging the Elite to the first ever Stadium Stampede match. And in the meantime, we will stay right here waiting for your response. We have all night. So the Inner Circle is waiting here in the ring, and then out comes Vangaurd 1. He flies in. He has the tiny Inner Circle t-shirt that Jericho gave him weeks ago. Jericho says, Vangaurd 1, you have a lot of guts showing up here after what you pulled. You understand? By the way, thanks for bringing back my shirt. I have warrants out in 7 states for you for grand larceny. And then he's like, hold this, big man. And he gives the tiny little shirt to Jake Hager. And he says, but I assume since you're here, you have an answer for us. Does the Elite accept the challenge for the Stadium Stampede? Jericho holds the mic up to Vangaurd 1. We have a perspective from Vangaurd 1. It says, we accept. Jericho says, the answer is yes. They said yes. You just sealed your fate, Elite. Look into my eyes, you Elite dumb idiots. And he says, hey, Vangaurd, between you and me, if you've thought any more about the invitation to join the Inner Circle, I gotta be honest with you, Vangaurd, it's already too late. We rescind that invitation. We already have a 6th member of the Elite. That is actually what he said, 6th member of the Elite. Obviously, that was misspoken. He meant Inner Circle. Right here, and it's Floyd pointing to the bat. And Floyd has a message for you and the Elite from the Inner Circle, and the message is this. Jericho then destroys Vangaurd 1 with the bat. The Inner Circle destroy the drone, and then Matt Hardy comes out, and the Inner Circle scrams, and Hardy looks like you just shot his dog in front of him, and he's picking up the pieces of his trusted friend now that it has been destroyed.
Eric, I don't know what you want to say about this, because it was so over the top and it was so ridiculous. Chris Jericho came across as like this really, really dorky supervillain, and he smashes Vangaurd 1. My other favorite part was the Inner Circle just like all jumping in, like stomping the hell out of it like it was like a gang fight, and they were just mocking Vangaurd 1 as it was in a million pieces. They walked out. Matt Hardy ran out. He just had this look. Matt Hardy, best Oscar, man. He looked so upset, and it made me feel very upset as well. This one, I have no idea what the hell a Stadium Stampede match is, but I am very, very excited to find out.
Yeah, I'm curious how this is going to go.
Just a Stadium Stampede match. I don't know what that means. I'm excited. Chris Jericho tough talking a drone of Vangaurd 1 version 2. Just saying, you got a lot of guts showing here, smashing it. This was over the top. It was a comedy. It set up a match. It didn't take itself serious. It was probably about 5-6 minutes of me just laughing on my couch. It was a proof that Chris Jericho, if you want him to be tough and do a Judas effect and knock out an opponent immediately, if you want him to go 20 minutes, if you want him to just be funny, Chris Jericho can deliver, and the Inner Circle was great, man.
Yeah, I thought this segment was great because the first half of it, he's challenging the Elite, talking about all them and Hangman picking berries in the forest of North Carolina, which was still hilarious. But the first half of this thing was all serious and getting under the Elite's skin, and then the second part was kind of the really the over the top, the funny kind of completely slapstick section of the promo. I've listened to a few commentators on this. Some of them did not like it. They thought it was too over top and Jericho shouldn't be doing stuff like this, but I think it is just hilarious. It might not be maybe for the well, who knows? I don't know, because I am not a casual fan, so I don't know what the casual fans feel like. I'm curious.
I couldn't tell you either. It made me laugh. I can only speak for myself. It made me laugh. I enjoyed it.
And then, what was another thing I was going to say about this? Oh man, there was something. Oh, I had something right on the tip of my tongue about this. Destroying Vangaurd. Oh, so yeah, like the destroying of Vangaurd. When I first saw it, when it first started, it felt like the beatdown of the printer from Office Space. And then I started getting feelings of when Matt Hardy came out. I'm like, this is totally Johnny Five getting beat up by the whatever you want to call them, the hoodlums at the end of Short Circuit 2. And it's like, oh man.
It was great. Well, Matt Hardy, and it was so briefly, but I'm sure you remember the Festival of Friendship that Chris Jericho did with Kevin Owens, and I remember seeing Chris Jericho's face when he's like, "Oh, why is my name on this list?" And there's of course the list of KO. I got that exact look of betrayal and heartbreak on Matt Hardy's face when he ran to the ring, and it was just really it was fun, man. It was a great time.
Yeah, I thought that worked out, and I'm sure we're gonna have Vanguard 1 version 3 on the way soon.
Yes, sir.
So then they announced that Nyla Rose and Hikaru Shida is going to be the no DQ match. They say next week is going to be MJF versus Marco Stunt. There's also going to be a face-to-face interview with Arn Anderson and Jake Roberts, so that's going to be interesting. We have a little bit of the battle of the managers here. Ray Phoenix versus Orange Cassidy. That's going to be an interesting one. We have Jon Moxley versus Number 10 and Sammy Guevara versus Matt Hardy. And then they also throw this little nugget in here. Mike Tyson is going to be the one to introduce the TNT Championship at Double or Nothing, or present it to the winner at Double or Nothing. So that is a interesting get.
That I was surprised. I enjoyed that very much. That's a great get.
Yeah, and so I gotta throw this in here because I actually just listened to before I went live here. I listened to Wrestle Talk's review of the show, and they were debating on whether Mike Tyson is as popular as other people, and they compared. Well, wouldn't Tyson Fury be more popular? No. Not at all. No. Not even close. Mike Tyson is a way bigger pop icon in the United States than Tyson Fury. I didn't know who Tyson Fury was until like 6 months ago when he was doing WWE crap and I heard it on a podcast. Yeah, everybody, I agree completely. Everybody in the US knows who Mike Tyson is. He is a way bigger draw than Tyson Fury, even though Tyson Fury is the heavyweight boxing champion right now. No, Mike Tyson is way bigger of a celebrity than pretty much anybody on the planet as far as, well, at least in the US. Mike Tyson, everybody knows who he is.
He's the baddest man on the planet, dude. Iron Mike Tyson, hands down, one of the greatest boxers of all time.
Right. So that is, yes, he is probably one of the most well-known people in the United States. Then we have Christopher Daniels with Kaz and Sky at ringside versus Mr. Brodie Lee, who has all his creepers at ringside. Brodie Lee comes out. He is wearing the AEW title around his waist. He hands it off to a creeper, and then after he gets introduced, he then kind of goes over to Dasha and is talking to her, and then she announces, "I stand corrected. The self-proclaimed AEW champion, Mr. Brodie Lee." Also, I never noticed this, but I just had to call it out here. Brodie Lee throws the open hand strike exactly like The Undertaker does.
Really?
He throws it as kind of that underhand slap, kind of from down low. He did that same strike a few times in this match. Exactly. I thought I was if you just
I'm gonna have to go back and watch it because I didn't catch that.
It was just because The Undertaker throws that strike very distinctly, and actually Brodie Lee throws it exactly the same. Brodie Lee beats on Daniels for a while. They fight onto the outside. Christopher Daniels turns it around for a little bit, hits an Arabian moonsault to the outside. No, he did not crash and burn like he did against Phoenix or Pentagon. One of them. Back in the ring, Brodie Lee runs Daniels over with a massive boot. This is like that clothesline that Hardy gave. This one just like decked him. Brodie Lee and the ref actually have a few conflicts throughout this match. Looks like Brodie Lee's, telling him to get out of his face. Of course, the ref is scolding him back. Throughout this match, they have little standoffs here and there. Brodie Lee stays in control throughout a commercial break. Daniels counters a back body drop with a DDT, and Daniels makes a little bit of a comeback here. Daniels hits a few forearms, kick to the back of the head, and then a Rana off the top rope. Number 10 causes a distraction, and Brodie Lee has a chair that got passed to him by a creeper. Daniels kicks the chair into Brodie Lee's face, and then he grabs the chair and wails Brodie Lee over the head with it. He did get his hands up. It was fine. Puts a submission attempt on. All of the Dark Order end up getting into the ring. SCU and Colt Cabana run them off. The commentary did cover up here that, well, it's not going to be a DQ because none of the participants was actually touched by either side. Right. So it was a nice little cover here, but they could have just kept this all on the outside of the ring and not had a potential, because that'd be a total potential just to throw the match out as a no contest at that point. Right. Daniels goes for he gets out of a chokeslam. Daniels gets out of a chokeslam, hits a Angel's Wings, which was very impressive given how the size differential is. Daniels only gets a 1 count out of that, barely. And Daniels goes for a second Angel's Wings, but Brodie blocks it. Daniels does his best moonsault ever onto a standing Brodie Lee. Daniels goes up to the top and goes for another Rana, but ends up getting power bombed. Brodie Lee hits a discus lariat and picks up the pin. Brodie Lee just stares at the camera and then goes to Dasha once again, and she re-announces him as the self-proclaimed AEW champion. Lee grabs the belt from a creeper, and then Moxley comes down through the stands, beats up a few creepers, gives the paradigm shift to number 10. Brodie Lee throws another one of his followers into the ring as a sacrifice, basically, and runs off. Moxley grabs the mic, says he admires guts. He can admire seizing the opportunity, but he will not suffer disrespect. He will not suffer fools. You, Brodie Lee, have made a foolish decision, one that you will pay for dearly. Boy, you will pay for it dearly with interest. The AEW title is about a lot more than a piece of metal, and you will find out at Double or Nothing. There will be a hailstorm of violence, and when the dust settles, Mr. Lee, you may find very well your AEW career is over before it started. And that was the end of the show.
Whew. Again, and actually, you know what? I'm going to start off with this. because last week I talked about it as well. Any opportunity that I can get to see any member of SCU fight in singles competition, it's always great to see. And what I like about SCU especially was last week it was Frank Kazarian versus Jon Moxley. This week it's Christopher Daniels versus Brodie Lee. Yeah. So AEW is literally using one of the greatest tag teams right now in AEW, which the tag team division is more of a pillar in AEW than anything.
Yeah.
These guys who are a tag team are in singles competition, and their job is to, one, they don't make the tag team look weak because they're not squash matches. They're putting on great matches against two great competitors. And both of those matches, the goal was to really get hype for the AEW World Heavyweight Championship. Chris Daniels did great in this match. He was fast. He didn't look weak. He looked like he can go toe-to-toe with Brodie Lee if Chris Daniels was in a match against Brodie Lee for the heavyweight championship. There are obviously big plans for these guys. SCU was absolutely great. So now that I can put over SCU, Brodie Lee, just first of all, I never really realized how tall he really is. I guess because when he was in WWE, he was with Rowan, and right. Rowan's the big dude. Yeah. But you really see him. He's a really big freaking guy, man.
Well, Christopher Daniels isn't exactly that tall either. He's probably right. 5'10" or so, and Brodie Lee is like 6'6", if not 6'7". Yeah. He's a big guy.
And Chris Daniels looks great. He's got great leap. But yeah, when Chris Daniels was connecting some of the offense he was throwing like up in Brodie Lee's face, that's really impressive because Brodie Lee is not a little guy. This match was great. It ended again. It was supposed to give you a little taste. Jon Moxley, of course, is going to come out trying to get his championship. He, of course, will not get it. You'd assume back by Double or Nothing. But this match again was intended to give you hype. It was intended to give you something to look forward to, and it did what it was supposed to do. I'm excited for this Moxley-Brodie Lee match.
Yeah, and I again, I'm going to be counter to what everybody else says. Some people were saying that this match went too long. It went 12 minutes and like 43 seconds or something like that. And it's like, yeah. It's Christopher Daniels. It's not like some schlub going up against Brodie Lee. Yeah, maybe that was 2 minutes too long, but I mean, it's Christopher Daniels, so he's in there with somebody who has a very long and storied career, and I think people have a lot of respect for Daniels, and I don't know why he would be taken out by Brodie Lee much shorter of time.
Yeah, if you wanted a squash, you'd have put Brodie Lee with Pineapple Pete or Marco Stunt, like Marco Stunt put over Lance Archer weeks ago. But Christopher Daniels is a very well-respected guy in the locker room. Maybe a minute or two too long, but the match was still interesting. It had everything you could really look for in a main event of a wrestling show. So I thought the match was great.
Yeah. And then, okay, so here is my gripe.
Okay.
Why did Jon Moxley wait so damn long when he showed up to the building at like a half hour into the show and not come out and not find Brodie Lee until the end of the show?
I wondered the same thing because they showed him. Why didn't they show him walking into the arena before that match, or maybe the match before the Pineapple Pete Jericho match? No, they showed him in like the first 20 minutes of Dynamite, and then he pops up at like the final 5-minute mark.
Right. So, it would have made way more sense if like the announcers had said, Jon Moxley is supposed to be here, but he hasn't made it to. We don't know where he is. We can't get a hold of him. Or you could even have it like, there's a film crew following Moxley for whatever made up reason, and then they can send in video off their cell phone or something like, we're stuck in traffic or something. Right. It doesn't matter. As long as you can still get Moxley visibly on the show somehow with him not being at the arena for whatever reason, and he can't get there until the end. So then it would actually be a surprise it wouldn't be really a surprise of him showing up, but him being there an hour and a half beforehand makes zero sense. You figured, well, wouldn't he be backstage trying to hunt down Brodie Lee? Like, right. Why didn't we have any backstage of him kind of scouring the place to try to find Brodie Lee to begin with? And then the only time he could actually find Brodie Lee is when Brodie Lee was scheduled to be somewhere. But again, that would make no sense. Why would he wait to the end of the match, and why wouldn't he just attack him at the beginning?
Yeah, it's like you can do so much. I mean, you could have all of Brodie Lee's followers. Maybe they got to Moxley and they tied him up, or you could literally do all these things. Maybe 10 got to him. But they showed him in the first 20 minutes, and I remember the whole time I thought that too. I was like, where the hell has Moxley been the last 90 minutes?
Right. That that would have made sense if they had if they found Moxley laid out in the back somewhere because the creepers beat him up or something, and then he could come out at the end because he, I don't know what the right word is, recuperated or whatever, and he came to and he's like, all right, I'm going to go kick some ass now, and that's the only reason he was late to the party. Something like that. It would have made... There's just this continuity hole was it was a little bit much for me on this one. But, they're going to make mistakes, but it's, they're making way less mistakes than other promotions are.
Right, exactly. There's a lot more to be desired of what they could have done, but I mean, it was what it was.
All right, so let's talk about a few other things. Let's talk about something that everybody seems to be obsessed about these days: is the ratings. Did you look at the ratings for this?
I did not, Eric. I'm assuming you did, or else you would not have brought it up.
I did. So the ratings were down significantly for both AEW and NXT. I think the biggest thing was at the same exact time, UFC had a show going on as well, and they pulled in some big numbers. Considering with the numbers that they pulled in this weekend, if you haven't heard, the prelims pulled in somewhere around 1.8 million viewers for the prelims of UFC 249, and they actually got 700,000 buy rate on the pay-per-view. So,
wow.
On Wednesday night, or last night, they also had a show, and I'm assuming if the prelims were that big on Saturday, they pulled in probably a comparable number to a full card that had some great matches on it from what I've heard. So that probably pulled away quite a few viewers. So both shows were down. AEW dropped to 654,000, which is the lowest number that they have ever done since they started. And NXT dropped to 600,000. So it's a 10% drop from last week for AEW and a 9% drop for NXT. Combined was 1.25 million viewers, which is the lowest combined since both shows started in October. So I'm guessing the UFC show had a lot to do with it, because I believe they pulled in somewhere around 1.7 million over on ESPN, but I don't have the solid numbers.
Damn.
And I'm sure it's a massive crossover between wrestling fans and UFC fans. And UFC did have some pretty exciting fights last night, so
I didn't even know that that was happening last night.
Yep. It was on ESPN Plus, so it's going to be a little more difficult to get the numbers because they're not on cable. So let's talk a little bit. Next week we'll get into it more, but we have the Double or Nothing card shaping up pretty well. We have 8 announced matches at this point. We have Cody versus Lance Archer for the AEW TNT Championship. I'm assuming that's probably going to go on last. It kind of makes sense. We have MJF versus Jungle Boy, Jon Moxley versus Brodie Lee for the AEW Heavyweight Championship. We then have the Casino Ladder match, which currently has been announced as Darby Allin, Colt Cabana, Orange Cassidy, Rey Fenix, and Scorpio Sky, with 4 more to be announced. I'm assuming they'll either be announced on Twitter leading up to next week's show or on next week's show. Nyla Rose versus Hikaru Shida. This is going to be a no DQ match. And Britt Baker and Kris Statlander has been announced. So their little tussle at the end of the 4-way has parlayed into a match between the two of them. And I think whoever wins that match will probably be bumped up to number 2 or even number 1, depending on how Hikaru Shida does. And then we have the Stadium Stampede match. We're still unsure what that means. I'm assuming it's a no DQ Falls Count Anywhere match, empty arena match again. And then we have a pre-show match has been announced. So we have Private Party versus Best Friends. So this was actually the match that actually happened yesterday. The winner of that match was going to go on to face Private Party. This is a number one contenders match.
Gotcha. Okay.
So on the pre-show, it's going to be Private Party versus Best Friends, and that will determine the number one contender for the AEW Championship, because the tag championship, because the tag titles will not be defended on this pay-per-view. So I'm guessing that match will probably happen mid-July. I'm guessing maybe they'll make a big deal of the 4th of July week or something like that. So that's the match. That's how Double or Nothing is filling out. And man, like I said at the beginning of the show, I thought this show was almost a go-home show, but we have one more to go. So I'm actually really looking forward to Double or Nothing now. They really filled out the card in the last week.
Yeah, they really didn't waste any time. Like we said at the beginning of the show, they had so much going on in this that we almost had to cannonball right into it. And the entire show was just one build-up for Double or Nothing to fill the card. But like you said, you definitely felt like, okay, the how it ended last night, I had to remind myself, oh no, this Saturday's the 16th. It's on the 23rd. They just packed everything into this, and next week I'm excited what else they fill in, especially them announcing who else is going to be in the ladder match. So I'm very, very, very excited for next week's Dynamite.
Yeah, and looking at all these matches, they pretty much all make complete sense of why they're happening. A lot of these, they had, they were already kind of juggling these to end up anyways. Cody Lance Archer obviously came out of the tournament, easy enough to set up that match. MJF versus Jungle Boy. We've had Jurassic Express has been in a little bit of a low brewing, a cold war, if you will, between Wardlow and MJF. So that's been brewing for a very long time. Jon Moxley versus Brodie Lee. We talked about it last week, how Brodie Lee technically is the number one contender. He's now 5-0. So that makes the most sense. And then the ladder match, you can really put anybody in there. Hikaru Shida has been the number one contender for like 12 weeks now. So her facing Nyla Rose is very logical. Kris Statlander, Britt Baker, they had the dust up at the end of the match. Might as well make it. Why not? And then Private Party, we have not heard them for quite a while. So I am a little perplexed on this one, on why they would get a number one contenders match. Right. Because they haven't been doing a ton. Best Friends, on the other hand, they've been racking up wins for weeks now. And then, of course, we have the Inner Circle versus the Elite. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get blood and guts for a very long time, because they're probably going to save that match till we can have crowds again.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't think they would be able to hold the Elite versus Inner Circle for that long, because who knows when we're going to get crowds again. Could they hold it over? Could they hold this match over until All Out? Maybe, but past All Out, and All Out would be doubtful on being able to have crowds even at the end of August. So it makes sense that they would go for this, which is essentially an empty arena match. You might as well do it at this point, because you don't have live fans that you're going to be disappointing by basically having them watch a TV screen for however long this match goes. So you might as well do this match instead of the blood and guts, which you can do in front of a crowd. That would make way more sense. And obviously the match would be 10 million times better in front of a crowd anyways. So I think this is a very good card so far. And I think next week at the end of the show, we should have our full card, and we can do predictions and some deeper analysis into this card.
Yeah, next I'm excited for next week's Dynamite, but after next week's Dynamite, I'm just ready for double or nothing already. They have just within the last 24 hours, which I was already gonna buy, but in the last 24 hours, they just got me so amped, and I'm ready. And I also wanted to salute not just AEW, but all these other wrestling promotions. I mean, really trying to pull this kind of stuff off, given the circumstances with what talent they may or may not have, what they have to work around, what parameters they have to work within. They're really trying to make sure that people are entertained during this time. And Double or Nothing, you can definitely tell, because they're putting a lot of thought and a lot of love into their bookings and who to put on and stuff like that. So I'm very excited to see how this pay-per-view turns out, given the circumstances.
Yeah, I'm super impressed, especially with Tony Khan from how he's been booking, because he basically booked that entire Georgia taping in 15 minutes.
That's impressive.
It's impressive that he scripted out. He had enough, they said, for all the way running up until Double or Nothing, if they needed to. So that's essentially, he booked out 7 shows in 15 minutes just to make it work so they could film. I think I was listening to the Unleashed with Aubrey Edwards, and she said that she reffed like 28 matches in like 2 days.
That's insane. To those of you listening who don't know the kind of stamina and endurance it takes to ref or call a match, just to pull 4 on one card in an indie show, it's considered a workout. But to pull that many in a couple days is just that's insane.
Yeah, because I think it was just her and one other ref were there for the taping, so she did like 28 some odd matches. Because they realized at one point they're going to have a continuity problem, especially for the Jake Hager John Moxley match that was at Daly's place. They're like, "Oh, you have to ref every match that's on that show because it would make no sense that he was in Georgia and then in Florida," even though we all know it was a tape show. But
right.
That was one thing why she had to ref extra matches, because they're like, "Oh, that would be a continuity error. He can't fly. He can't move that fast."
That's absolutely insane.
Yeah, it was pretty good. You got anything else to add on this week's show before we close it out?
I don't. It was solid. The whole purpose of the show was to get you excited for pay-per-view buys and to get you excited for Double or Nothing. It accomplished it. It did what it was supposed to do. I got nothing. It was a solid show.
Yeah. And again, they did not even mention AEW Dark once, which is a pet peeve of mine. They need to stop doing that, and they need to actually promote AEW Dark. But besides the couple illogical points, John Moxley showing up an hour and a half before he actually confronts Brodie Lee, that didn't make a ton of sense, and how they filmed Cody with his truck, that made no sense either, because he was just sitting like 15 feet away from this. He drove like 15 feet, big deal. They could have made that a little bit more exciting. It was a tape show, so if they screwed up a take, big friggin' deal, redo it. Right. But yeah, other than that, that's kind of the gripes I had on this show. So why don't you give any plugs or anything that you want to have people follow you on?
All right, guys. Well, if you are on Instagram, my social media game isn't exactly on fire. I got a baby now, but I'm trying to get better at that. But you can follow me at DC_West_. Or if you want to support local wrestling and support independent wrestling, or if you live in the South Central Pennsylvania area, go to facebook.com/Pro Warrior Alliance. Pro Warrior Alliance is a small professional independent wrestling promotion that I am the current general manager and wrestler in training of. So check us out on Facebook. Shout out Ray Alexander. Shout out my fellow Warriors.
Cool. And thanks for listening, everybody. If you'd like to submit some questions to the mailbag, please send us an email, eric@thatswrestling.com. We'd love to get some questions so we can get some and feedback, comments, anything like that. You can shoot them over there, eric@thatswrestling.com. Check in the description. I am adding a link to our, my Discord from all my various projects, but there's a wrestling channel in there as well, so you can come hang out. And I'll probably add Discord call-in lines at some point, because Discord is nice and clean, and that is an easy way to get a hold of us, and maybe we can take some live calls in the future if this show gets a little bit bigger. If you're listening to this as a podcast, head over to YouTube and to the That's Wrestling channel, because we do this show live. We are live right now on Thursday evening after the show, so you can join us in the chat and drop anything if you have any questions or comments in there. And if you are watching this on YouTube, you like to pick it up as a podcast, it is on all your favorite podcast apps. Shoot me an email, eric@thatswrestling.com. If you cannot find it on yours, now get it added. Head over to YouTube, leave us a review. I think that's all the plugs. Head over to that'swrestling.com if you need the RSS feed, and that's everything. Oh, one more. If you'd like to be a co-host covering New Japan, or if you just want to be a fill-in or a panelist, if we do a post-show or a pre-show on something, shoot me an email, eric@that'swrestling.com. So I think that's everything, and we will see you next week on Thursday, hopefully at 7 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you next time on That's Wrestling. See you later, guys. And we are